Well, like I said, I'm very excited for today's presentation to talk about the nominees for the upcoming Oscars. We have film professor Zbigniew Banas here to talk film. Welcome.
Welcome, good morning. And it is an early morning given the time change as our bodies are trying to adjust to the daylight savings time. But we are a week away from the Academy Awards on the 15th of March this year. The Academy of Motion Pictures Arts and Sciences will present its annual awards. Of course, the Oscars always have been and still are the biggest prize in the movie business, and whether the movie business as a whole matters today as much as it used to, well, that is a subject of debate. But movies are not dead, and we can measure it in a number of different ways, from the popularity at the box office to the role of cinema in popular culture. We are now at the tail end of the awards season. I don't know whether many of you have followed the various awards, first coming from the critics groups, then from the guilds, professional guilds in Hollywood, then the British Academy Awards, and now we are getting to the Oscars. But this year, it seems there are two movies that are being talked about as the main favorites for the Oscars in the major categories. And that is the film Sinners, which received a record-breaking 16 nominations. The previous record for the Oscars was 14 nominations. Now it's a new leader of the pack. And the second movie with the largest number of nominations, also predicted to do well at the Oscars this year, is One Battle After Another. In terms of what these movies are and what the other nominated films are all about and how it adds up to the current state of cinema, well, that is, among other things, what we are going to talk about during this hour. By the end of my presentation, I will give you some predictions as to what the favorites are in each major category. So if you have your ballots ready, or if you are participating in some kinds of office polls, yes, there will be hints in terms of what you can expect a week from today. And if you have any questions pertaining to some of the less prominent categories or anything that has to do either with this year's edition of the Oscars or with any specific movies, please wait with your questions until the end of this presentation, and there will be time to type in your questions in the chat, and I will make sure to address them at the very end. But first, I'd like to take you to the history of the Oscars, if only very briefly, just to create a foundation for the coverage of this year's awards. This year's Oscars will mark the 98th Oscar ceremony. The first ceremony took place in 1929, and it was a way of Hollywood honoring itself for the best productions of the year. It has remained that way for the past 98 years. The 100th Oscars will be celebrated 2 years from now. And it's not that the Academy Awards are static. They are always changing. Some categories are added, some other categories are removed. This year, we are going to have 24 Oscar categories, including a new one for Best Casting. More on that later, because that category I have a slight problem with. I'll share that in a moment. But when it comes to the 100th Oscars 2 years from now, there will be a new category yet for Best Stunt Design. And 2 years from now, there is going to be a fairly monumental change in that after many decades of being broadcast on various television channels, most recently ABC, the telecast of the Oscars is going to move to YouTube. Why YouTube? Well, times are changing. The traditional media are not what they used to be, and YouTube has a much greater worldwide reach. And the Oscars have become a world event, much more so than Hollywood simply celebrating itself. There are about 10,000 members of the American Academy of the Motion Pictures Arts and Sciences who are voting for the Oscars, and this body has been increased significantly in terms of numbers over the past few years, from about 5,000 gradually to about 10,000. A lot of these new voters are somewhat younger. A lot of them represent people from many different countries. And this demographic shift has also, according to some at least, affected the voting itself in terms of what kinds of movies win and how that reflects this broader scope of tastes and preferences that come from the um, newly admitted members of the American Academy. All the voters vote in the final stage of voting, which is about to close. It's really a process that started a number of weeks ago with various branches of the Academy voting on the nominations. When I said that the Academy comprises about 10,000 members, they are divided into branches: director's branch, actor's branch, cinematographer's branch, and so on. And when it comes to the nominating process, each one of these branches votes for the achievements within that specialty. So directors nominate directors, actors nominate actors, and so on. But once the nominations are announced, then the entire Academy votes on all the nominations. So just to make this point clearer, when Sinners received 16 Oscar nominations this year, they came from various groups of people within the Academy. The directors saw an opportunity to honor Ryan Coogler, the director of Sinners. The cinematographers likewise wanted to honor the author of the images to the movie. And thus, the film clearly reflects a broad range of support coming from each one of these branches individually. Now, whether this is going to be met by an equal support across the board when everyone votes in all the categories, well, that's a slightly different and a more complex questions. And you may wonder, as to whether those who are, for example, writers can properly assess the quality of cinematography or special effects. But that's how the Academy works. And the Academy comprises those who have achieved the greatest success in the movie business. You cannot simply join the Academy, you have to be invited based on one's professional achievements within the various fields. And that is really what makes the Oscars special. Not just that they are televised and it's a big event, but it is a group of about 10,000 people who have achieved the highest peaks of accomplishments within the movie business, who are then looking at the productions of a given year and trying to decide what among them amounted to very special achievements. In the past, there were questions about promotional campaigns and possible bribing. The Academy has largely curtailed those. And there was also a matter of wondering whether all the members of the Academy even watch all the nominated movies or whether they just kind of mark their ballots. But this year, for the very first time, this matter has also been addressed by the Academy, and all the members now have to watch movies on on a platform known as the Academy Screening Room. They put in a special code. They watch the movies by linking to that platform. And only when the platform registers that a given Academy member has seen all the nominees within a given category, will that member of the Academy be permitted to vote on that category. So this changes the game at least somewhat because the Academy ensures that those who will be voting will in fact have seen all the movies. Whether this is going to change the results in any way, who knows? The Academy never reveals the final tallies. We only find out about the winners on the Oscars night. We never know how many votes a given movie received or how close the vote was in a given category. Those numbers are never revealed. But obviously, within the inner works of the Academy, it does matter. Now, what else should we expect in terms of the 98th Academy Awards, either by way that is similar or different from previous editions? Well, the organizers are trying to make the telecast snappy and interesting for worldwide audiences. Now, what does that really mean? Well, it means, among other things, that they don't want the telecast to be too long. But with 24 categories, it's really hard to do justice to all of them and still have the telecast be relatively short. Controversies come up almost every year, one way or another. In some of the recent years, certain categories were not televised live. The Oscars were presented, and then just a brief encapsulation was presented as part of the telecast. This year, the major controversy has to do with the nominated songs. Songs obviously punctuate the telecast, and they provide a way of introducing a musical number that is different from simply people talking. But it takes time. Those songs, each one of them lasts 4 or 5 minutes, and they have to be staged appropriately. And the organizers of this year's event have decided that only two of these songs will be presented live as part of the telecast. The one from Sinners and the one from K-pop Demon Hunters, which, by the way, is slated to or predicted to win. This has angered a lot of people in the business, especially those who were nominated but whose songs will not be featured as part of the telecast. And this includes Diane Warren, a person who received the largest number of nominations without winning a competitive Oscar, who is nominated yet again this year. She did receive an honorary Oscar 4 years ago, but it's not the same as winning a competitive one. And you are not going to hear her sing next Sunday. Well, the telecast does matter. The Academy of the Motion Pictures Arts and Sciences makes its money by providing the rights to the telecast, and the broadcaster then makes money by selling ads. And the amount of money is very much contingent upon the viewership. And the viewership of the Oscars has been going down in recent years. Back in the 1970s, there were 40 some million households that would watch the Oscars on every night, and everyone would sit around the television screen, and it was a big deal. Even by the 1990s, especially the year of the Titanic, the audience of the live telecast was close to 50 million. The last few years, it's been under 20 million, at least in the United States. And this has worried the members of the Academy itself, the organizers. This is how the Academy makes money for their year-round film-related programs. The organizers decided to do something about it, and a shorter telecast is meant to ensure that people don't get bored watching it, and that when it ends on the East Coast, especially, the hour will still not be too late. But this phenomenon of a dwindling television audience is something that in today's age seems to be inevitable. And it's not simply that the Oscars don't matter as much anymore. Well, maybe a little bit of that too. But it's simply the case that in the 1970s or 80s, people who wanted to watch the Oscars would have to see it live. Today, it's a very different matter. The younger audiences don't see much of a point of sitting in front of the television set for 3 or 4 hours watching the broadcast, or if you add the red carpet, it's 5 or 6 hours of viewing time. They can wait until the late evening or the next day and just watch a few snippets here and there, a few minutes of the highlights of the event. And I think that if you look at it from that perspective, the total number of people who connect to the Oscars one way or another is still very large. It's just that those people don't necessarily sit and watch the live broadcast the way they used to. And the broadcast is beamed around the globe. This reflects both the interest in the event itself, but also the shifting situation within the movie industry. Once upon a time, Hollywood dominated the movie world in terms of the number of pictures, in terms of the biggest hits, the most money-making movies around the globe. But today the situation has changed significantly. There are a lot of movies made in other countries, even though that we still call Hollywood films, are actually shot in various countries around the globe. It's also the case that when you look at the list of the most popular movies around the world, increasingly you see international productions, especially in recent years from China and Japan. And the nominations for the Academy do reflect it. In recent years, as many of you I'm sure have noticed, there's been a greater number of foreign language films that have been nominated in various Oscar categories, including Best Picture. Now, if you're wondering how a movie can be nominated for Best Picture if it's not in English, well, the category is Best Picture. It's not a Best English Language Picture. Now, there is a special category that used to be known as the Best Foreign Language category. Now it's known as the Best International Feature Film category that is designed specifically to showcase international cinema. And when it comes to that specific category, every country around the globe has the right to submit one movie as long as it is not predominantly in the English language. Those movies don't have to have American distributors, and in most cases, they don't have theatrical distribution in the United States. A special committee within the Academy, comprising several hundred people, watches those submissions, and then there is a shortlist, and then there are 5 nominations. But all the other categories are open to movies regardless of the language in which they are made. Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor, Best Music, Best Cinematography. It doesn't matter whether a movie is made in English or not. What does matter is that it fulfills eligibility criteria that the Academy has set forth. And those criteria have to do with having theatrical distribution in Los Angeles and a number of specific other markets during the previous year, in this case, 2025. And any movie made in a language other than English, if it was distributed in theaters, qualifies in all the categories, including Best Picture. What's interesting about the reach of the world cinema when it comes to the Oscars is that when you look at the nominations for Best Picture of movies made in languages other than English, in the entire 20th century, there were only 5 movies total that managed to break through into the Best Picture nominating list. On the other hand, when you look at the recent years, in each one of the recent years, there were at least 2 or even 3 movies nominated in the Best Picture category that were not made in English. This year, we have 2. And Parasite from South Korea became the first winner of the Best Picture. The world of cinema has truly become the world of cinema. And the position of Hollywood is not the same as it used to be. When you're going to watch the Oscars telecast next Sunday, and I certainly hope that you are going to watch, you're going to hear acceptance speeches coming from people from all kinds of countries. They will be speaking English in various accents. Some of them will be British, Australian, but some of them I strongly suspect will come from people from South America and Asia. And it is one global filmmaking village. To recognize the greater international content of cinema and also the greater international reach of the Oscars telecast, you're also going to see some presenters who come from outside of the United States. This reality of filmmaking is evolving, but the global nature of filmmaking is here to stay. Some of the best equipped studios are outside of the United States. Some of the greatest filmmaking talent, both in front of the camera and behind the camera, does come from around the globe. So this is more or less the landscape of how we got to be where we are today in terms of the Oscars. And I think I'm looking at the clock. It's 11:25 in Chicago, so I have about half an hour. I better get around to the specific nominations that we have this year, because, as I suspect, a lot of you are waiting for some comments about each one of these movies and the major nominees. Well, let's start again with some statistics. When it comes to the nominations, as I said, Sinners led with 16 nominations, a record-breaking number, followed by One Battle After Another with 13 nominations. There were three movies with 9 nominations each: Frankenstein, Marty Supreme, and a film from Norway, Sentimental Value. And then Hamnet received 8 nominations, and these 6 movies, all of which are nominated for Best Picture, are also seen as the front runners for the major Oscars. Now, in a cumulative sense, these movies reflect something very interesting because you don't see any sequels or prequels among them. They are original creations, very often made not by some kind of a studio machine, but by writer-directors, auteurs of cinema, who shape a certain project from the very beginning. And there is still very much a dissonance between those movies that are most popular at the box office and those that get nominated for the Oscars. If you look at the list of top grossing movies domestically in 2025, here is what they were. Number 1, a Minecraft movie. Number 2, Lilo and Stitch. Number 3, Superman. Number 4, Jurassic World Rebirth. None of these, by the way, received any Oscar nominations. Number 5, Zootopia 2. Number 6, Wicked for Good. Number 7, Sinners. Number 8, Fantastic Four: First Steps. Number 9, How to Train Your Dragon. And number 10, Avatar: Fire and Ash. Now, some of these titles from that are positioned 5 through 10, certainly Sinners, but also Wicked for Good and Avatar: Fire and Ash, and very importantly, Zootopia 2, did receive some Oscar nominations in various categories. But honoring the achievements in cinema is not the same as measuring which movies are the most popular ones at the box office. And when you look at the worldwide list of the biggest box office hits of last year, the number 1 movie is actually Ne Zha 2, a Chinese production which grossed over $2 billion worldwide. That is a movie that is not nominated this year, and it's not really so much on the radar of American audiences. But it's yet another measure of how the global box office is determined more and more by productions made outside of the United States. And then when you look down at the global box office list, we have Zootopia 2, Avatar: Fire and Ash, Lilo and Stitch, a Minecraft movie. What do they have in common? Well, they are either sequels of already popular movies, or they are films made for children. And these kinds of movies dominate the box office. But what this reflects is the kinds of productions that simply give the audiences more of what they already like and embrace. This is not about artistic creativity. And the Oscars are still at least trying to say, hey, movies can be special. Movies can be greater than simply making clones of what already has proved to be successful. This year, we have 10 films nominated in the Best Picture category, and since 2009, there have been there was an increase of the number of films nominated in the Best Picture category from 5 to 10. If you recall, it had to do with how the 5 movies nominated for Best Picture were getting more and more obscure, and it was believed that somehow that is the reason why the television audiences are getting smaller and smaller. The Academy back in 2009 decided to increase the number of movies that would be nominated for Best Picture, hoping that this would include some of the bigger Hollywood blockbusters. In 2009, it specifically had to do with the omission of Dark Knight, but it has worked to a point at which, when you look at the list of this year's nominees, there are big budget movies such as Sinners or F1, a movie about Formula One, movies that have been seen by a lot of audiences. But even those movies are not typical sequels or clones or prequels or spin-offs. They are original productions. Original productions are always risky. There are ways of mitigating that risk financially. And there have to be committed filmmakers and committed studios to finance these kinds of productions. By the way, when it comes to virtually any movie, the cost of production of which is more than $100 million, in order to break even, these movies need to be shown at the movie theaters. Movie theaters still matter for a variety of reasons. One of which is that, well, every ticket sold at the movie theater is one person watching the movie. When movies are streamed at home, who knows how many people are watching them for a single fee. Then there is also a matter of piracy, which is quite significant when it comes to streaming and online sharing. So these expensive productions do need a theatrical release. But then again, when it comes to the Oscars, they also have to represent something very special. It is not a coincidence that those high-budget movies that you have on the Best Picture nominated list were made by filmmakers who have established themselves in Hollywood to a point at which they can get the money to make these productions that are costly, that are sometimes risky. And there are still financiers who will put up the money for these productions because they believe in those filmmakers. And sometimes it's simply a matter of saying, hey, you've made enough money for us. We can now kind of support your project, hoping that we are not going to lose money on it. If all goes well, money will be made. This is precisely the case of Sinners. And I'm talking about this title on more than one occasion because it is a record-breaking phenomenon this year. Sinners was directed by Ryan Coogler, a man who started his film career a little more than a dozen years ago with a small film, Fruitvale Station, which played at the Sundance Film Festival. It became a critical darling. Then he went on to make Creed and then Black Panther and then Black Panther Wakanda Forever. And these movies made a lot of money. And then he wanted to make Sinners, a genre-bending film that would cost about $100 million to make. But after those earlier hits, he finally found himself in a position of being able to command that kind of money. And the studio said, sure, we'll give it to you, in part because the movie looks interesting. We're not sure whether this story set in the 1930s South having to do with blues music and vampires is going to be successful at the box office, but we'll take that risk. And the same may be said about Paul Thomas Anderson, who made one battle after another. To some degree, this is also true of Guillermo del Toro, the filmmaker who created Frankenstein, another one of the nominated movies. And on a smaller scale, because the budget was slightly smaller, the same is true of Yorgos Lanthimos, a Greek filmmaker who made the film Bugonia, also nominated for Best Picture. Oh, so now I am actually bringing in more titles. So let me read you the list of the 10 movies nominated for Best Picture with some comments, because this will also serve as a way of orienting ourselves in terms of where cinema is today, in terms of the kinds of movies that earn accolades. And this, to some degree, is also, I think, going to mark the direction of where the cinema is going to evolve in the next few years. So, alphabetically, here are the 10 movies nominated for Best Picture. Bugonia. Bugonia is a film starring Emma Stone. It's in the English language, but the filmmaker is Yorgos Lanthimos, a Greek filmmaker who made such films as The Favorite and Poor Things. He is well known both to the Academy and to the international audiences, and Emma Stone is his favorite actress, at least as of late, starring in a number of movies that he has directed. Bugonia is technically a remake of a South Korean film. It's a black comedy thriller with some surreal elements. Yorgos Lanthimos is not someone whose movies are easy to interpret or even embrace, but he clearly is a very powerful, unique cinematic voice, recognized for his originality. The second film, alphabetically, is F1, a big budget production, and F1 stands for Formula One, auto racing, which is big around the world. We are back now to this global concept of filmmaking. The movie stars Brad Pitt, a well-established Hollywood star, but it was shot around the world at the locations where the Formula One races took place. And the organizers of this racing circuit were fully on board supporting this production. In fact, they embedded the filmmakers and the actors into the actual car racing pits during those events. The movie feels real because it was shot at the real locations. And it's the kind of a film, the success of which, I'm now talking about the financial success, is largely dependent on having audiences worldwide, which it happened to get. Another mark for the globalization of cinema. Frankenstein is the next film. Well, the title says it all. We are back to, a science fiction drama. There have been a number of versions of Frankenstein made before. This one comes from Guillermo del Toro, a Mexican filmmaker working in Hollywood, and another one of these individuals who basically can make any movie that he wants simply by virtue of his previous cinematic achievements. The Shape of Water, that he directed, for example, won Best Picture. In this version of Frankenstein, it's very much about the monster being not so much a monster. Jacob Elordi plays him, and he got a nomination as Best Supporting Actor. It's a movie that was produced by Netflix, and that's a whole different aspect of where the cinema is today. A couple of nominated movies are Netflix productions. In order to qualify for the Oscars, they do have to play theatrically. Netflix doesn't want to release movies theatrically, but they abide by those requirements. So these pictures do play for a week here and there, or maybe a couple of weeks, and then they go to streaming. And this nomination is a very important way of showing how traditional cinema, which is best seen on the big screen, a very visual way of storytelling, is in fact embraced by at least some of the streaming companies. Not on a regular basis, but when it comes to attracting some of these big name filmmakers who um, who well make movies in a way that they want the audiences to see. And the streaming services do broaden the audience. It's not always the happiest marriage. There's a lot of give and take. But Frankenstein clearly points to how such streaming producers as Netflix can be vital in making movies in today's landscape. Hamnet is the next one. It's a British film, but directed by a woman born in China, Chloe Zhao. The cinematographer is Polish. The main actors are Irish. Another one of these international productions, which has to do with the Shakespeare family, a movie that has done well at the box office. It's a rather speculative, irreverent look at history. Um, it's not going to win Best Picture, most likely, but Jessie Buckley, who plays the character of Shakespeare's wife, is the favorite in the acting category for Best Actress. More on the acting categories in a few minutes. Marty Supreme, a movie from Josh Safdie, one of the Safdie brothers, best known for Uncut Gems, a movie made several years ago with Adam Sandler. In recent years, the two brothers have gone their separate ways. Josh Safdie's first solo movie is Marty Supreme, but it's as frantic, as driven as Uncut Gems was, about a movie about a Jewish striver, a master table tennis player who wants to parlay his talent into some kind of a social and financial success, and he will not stop until he gets it. Timothée Chalamet plays the lead role. He is one of the favorites in the Best Actor category. This movie is not everyone's cup of tea, but it's original in a sense of a cinematic language used by Josh Safdie. This driven, frenetic storytelling, you cannot miss it for anyone else's picture. One Battle After Another, a movie that combines politics and a father-daughter story and an action movie and a satire. It's one of the genre-bending films. And those genre-bending films, by the way, are very much seen today as amounting to quality filmmaking. Once upon a time, comedies were comedies and thrillers were thrillers, and some of the Oscar winners were just traditional genre movies. In today's landscape, and I think the younger generation of voters have something to say about it, a movie apparently needs to be a little bit of everything, have some tragedy and have some comedy and have some action, and it must not be boring. Something must be happening every minute. And then the movie should be saying something important about some issues. Um, and if it does so, then the kind of a package can be pointed to as a great example of what cinema can accomplish. Mind you, last year, Anora won Best Picture, and that was a movie that was not everyone's cup of tea, but it also combined comedy and romance and action and some crime-related elements. And then it was about the power of people who have money. So it had this deeper context. This year, both Sinners and One Battle After Another are very much these kinds of films. One Battle After Another was directed by Paul Thomas Anderson, who earlier made There Will Be Blood and Phantom Thread, a very respected filmmaker, and also someone like Christopher Nolan or Quentin Tarantino, who at this point of his career can get almost any movie made that he wants. He is a writer director, like Ryan Coogler of Sinners, and this is very much personal auteur cinema made for a large budget. The Secret Agent is a film from Brazil, and the first of two movies made in a language other than English, a political story starring Wagner Moura, who is nominated as Best Actor. A movie that did really well at the Cannes Film Festival last year, and a great example of how a lower budget international cinema can bring in something vibrant to the cinematic landscape. Sentimental Value, a movie from Norway, received 9 Oscar nominations. That's a lot for a foreign language film, including Best Picture. A story of an aging father, a filmmaker, and his two estranged daughters. And he wants to make a movie based on the story of his family. This leads to some tension, but also some reconciliation within the family, and also to revealing some secrets from the past. A really well-made production, which probably will win 1 or 2 Oscars, but not necessarily for Best Picture. Sinners is the movie that I've mentioned more often than any other film today. It also mixes a lot of genres, the blues music and slavery and an action film, and it even has vampires. And it's all in a way of connecting elements from real history through metaphors to tell the story of how it's all connected, how blues reflects the Black experience, how vampires can be used symbolically, how, in fact, very dynamic cinematic storytelling can juggle all these elements in a way that is both entertaining and meaningful. And the last one is Train Dreams, a very quiet movie made by Netflix, a film about an average man, a logger living in the West for much of the first part of the 20th century. Nothing special about him or his life. And yet the movie puts a spotlight on his existence in a way that makes it seem valuable. And the life of an average man, of each one of us, by extension, becomes valuable as well. It's almost an antidote to these fast-moving films. And I'm very happy that the Academy chose to nominate it among the Best Picture. So, which movie is going to win? Well, I typically go to two different kinds of sources. One has to do with the insiders, and the other has to do with outsiders. The insiders are polled very deliberately by various Hollywood-based media. So I typically look at Variety, which is still probably the most important publication. And according to Variety, Sinners is going to win Best Picture. But then there is the outside look, which has to do with saying, well, put your money where your mouth is. And there are betting lines in Vegas mostly, but also in other places now where one can bet on any movie when it comes to the Oscars. And when it comes to the betting line, One Battle After Another is the big favorite. One of these two movies is going to win next Sunday in the Best Picture category. Which one? We'll see. While 10 movies are nominated in the Best Picture category, there are only 5 directors who are nominated for Best Director. And this usually points to which of the nominated pictures have stronger support in Hollywood. The 5 directors nominated are Chloe Zhao for Hamnet, Josh Safdie for Marty Supreme, Paul Thomas Anderson for One Battle After Another, Joachim Trier for Sentimental Value, and Ryan Coogler for Sinners. What's interesting about these directors is that a lot of them are writer-directors, they are auteurs, and they also represent a certain generation. They were all born between 1970 and 1986, so they are in their 40s or 50s. This is the kind of a moment in Hollywood when young filmmakers are making their kinds of movies. The older filmmakers are still there, but when you look at the list of this year's nominees, it's mostly the middle-aged group that is recognized for their work. According to Variety, Ryan Coogler should win for Sinners. According to the betting line, Paul Thomas Anderson will win for One Battle After Another, as he did from the Directors Guild of America. Again, next Sunday we'll find out. Best Actor, the 5 nominations: Timothée Chalamet for Marty Supreme, Leonardo DiCaprio for One Battle After Another, Ethan Hawke for Blue Moon, Michael B. Jordan for Sinners, and Wagner Moura for The Secret Agent. Up until recently, Timothée Chalamet was the big favorite for Marty Supreme, and he is very much liked in Hollywood, sort of a wonder boy. This is his 3rd Oscar nomination. But last weekend, the Screen Actors Guild gave its awards, and Michael B. Jordan won Best Actor, which was a bit of a surprise, but it has elevated him into the frontrunner role, and now both Variety and Las Vegas betting lines point to him as the likely winner. I don't think that this is necessarily going to happen because Timothée Chalamet and even Ethan Hawke for Blue Moon has a strong chance. It's a fairly open category. Not so with Best Actress, where Jessie Buckley for Hamnet has been winning essentially every important award to date, and she is predicted to win next Sunday in a way that nobody seems to question. In the supporting roles, the favorite among women is Amy Madigan for the film Weapons. If anyone else is going to win, it may be Teyana Taylor for One Battle After Another. The Best Supporting Actor category is quite open. Stellan Skarsgård may be recognized for Sentimental Value, and he is a very well-known actor in Hollywood, even though he is Swedish. Sean Penn won the Best Supporting Actor in the Screen Actors Guild Award. Delroy Lindo for Sinners has a lot of support. We'll see. This is quite open. In the Best Screenplay categories, it seems everything is easy because Sinners and One Battle After Another are not competing against one another. Sinners is predicted to win the original screenplay, and One Battle After Another the Best Adapted Screenplay. It's an adaptation of Thomas Pynchon's novel Vineland. Best Animated Feature, almost definitely K-pop Demon Hunters. Best International Feature, probably Sentimental Value. If there is an upset, then it may be the Brazilian film The Secret Agent. Best Documentary Feature Film, most likely The Perfect Neighbor, about the killing of a black woman in Florida by her white neighbor, a movie that won a directing prize at Sundance last year. Best Music, Sinners, Best Song, K-pop Demon Hunters, Golden. You are going to hear it as part of the ceremony. In the technical categories, a number of awards should go to Frankenstein, including Best Production Design, Best Makeup and Hairstyling, and Best Costume Design, Best Cinematography, Sinners, Best Film Editing, either F1 or One Battle After Another, Best Visual Effects, Avatar, Fire and Ash. And that finally brings me to the Best Casting category, a new category this year. This is a tricky category to account for, simply because I'm not sure what Best Casting necessarily denotes. The Screen Actors Guild has an award for Best Ensemble Acting. And that one I understand. You look at the movie, you look at the actors, and you say that's a great group of actors. They deserve to be honored as an entire group. And Sinners won the Screen Actors Guild Award for Best Ensemble Acting. Best Casting honors the casting director, and casting directors now have their branch at the Academy, so they want to have their own Oscar, and now, as of this year, they do. But how do we know who really was responsible for casting those actors? A lot of directors write their screenplays for specific actors. When you look at One Battle After Another, Paul Thomas Anderson wrote that screenplay for Leonardo DiCaprio and for Benicio del Toro. Sinners was written for Michael B. Jordan, who and a number of other actors who had worked with Ryan Coogler before. When you look at some other filmmakers, Martin Scorsese, Wes Anderson, they have their own group of actors who appear in every one of their movies. So if we look at those movies and say, oh, that's a great acting ensemble, is it really the casting director who ought to be honored or not? Well, but there will be an Oscar given for Best Casting this year, and Sinners is predicted to win. Conan O'Brien is going to be the host of the event next Sunday. We know that the honorary Oscars, they already have been given to Debbie Allen, Tom Cruise, and a production designer, Wynne Thomas. The Jean Hersholt Humanitarian Award went to Dolly Parton. And as for whether there are going to be any surprises next Sunday in terms of added elements, I think that there will be something special prepared to honor the great Robert Redford, who passed away last year. But whether that finds its way into a telecast that will be as abridged as possible remains to be seen. So that's my take on this year's Oscars, and we have maybe a couple of minutes. Let me look at the chat. There is a question there. How does rank choice voting affect the Best Picture results? Well, it does. This is basically like a political voting where the choices are ranked, and the movie that's in the last position is eliminated, and they are basically recalculated until we get the winner. In terms of how this affects the voting, the Academy never reveals basically the final tally. I think it is a way of ensuring that the movie that makes a very strong impact in the end wins. So, for example, if a movie it's an okay movie, it's somewhere in the middle of the pack, but it doesn't appear on many ballots in the number one position, that kind of a movie is very unlikely going to win. So look for those strong genre-bending movies, and at least this year the choice seems to be clear: Sinners or One Battle After Another. One Battle After Another or Sinners. One of them is going to win. Which film, which did not get any nominations, do you think should have? Well, that's a very broad question. And frankly, I am quite happy with this year's nominations. I was, in fact, looking of some films to recommend to my friends that went completely under the radar. But none of them really went completely under the radar. There are a few interesting movies that, for one reason, were not noticed. Um, but let me say that in a broader sense, right now, with those big budget auteur films coming from Hollywood and some of the international productions, what you see less honored is American independent cinema. And that's a topic for a whole different conversation. American independent cinema these days is not doing all that well. You can see it at the Sundance Film Festival, you can see it with the Oscars. Do you expect many political statements, whether in pins, clothing, or winners' statements? I think you are going to hear some jabs, but it really depends who is going to win. Conan O'Brien was invited to host the Academy Awards for the second time, in part because he is not overly political. He is going to try to steer away from politics, but politics always is there. If you look, for example, at the chances of One Battle After Another and Sinners, the foundation for One Battle After Another is politics. This is about one political battle after another. Sinners is about the racist past and the blues music. All movies function in their place and time. I suspect that this is very much a matter of how, in the end, One Battle After Another may do better than Variety believes because it fits the political moment more directly than Sinners does. Why was Nuremberg left out? I don't know, but it is a movie that is quite interesting in terms of the psychology. Russell Crowe was outstanding. Russell Crowe, for a number of reasons, has his supporters, but he also has his detractors, both as an actor, not so much for this role specifically. And I think that Nuremberg is an old-fashioned film. You know, ever since Everything Everywhere All at Once won Best Picture Oscar, and last year it was Anora. These movies that juggle various film genres are just more likely to be nominated and they are more likely to win. And more traditional movies, such as Nuremberg, no matter how well they are made, are seen as more sort of outdated productions. This is very much a matter of the younger generation now becoming more powerful in terms of their votes as part of the Academy, in terms of the kinds of movies they make. And those of us who like old-fashioned cinema are finding ourselves more and more at odds with what is perceived to be quality filmmaking today. I like those genre-bending movies, but then again, I like those old-fashioned movies too. And probably the best old-fashioned film that I can suggest from those that are nominated is the Norwegian film Sentimental Value, and after that, Train Dreams. And Nuremberg, well, you can watch it, and I suspect that you are going to enjoy it, but it's nowhere to be found on the Oscars nominations list. Okay, Erin, I think that's all in terms of the questions.
You got it. Thank you so much for that. Your detailed take on everything. I learned a few things I didn't know in a few years. It was going to YouTube. The Oscars are going to YouTube, and Thank you so much for getting us ready for the Oscars next weekend. I got some
And
movies to
don't forget
watch.
the red carpet. I'm not an expert on who is going to wear what or whom, but the Oscars telecast doesn't start with the first category. It starts a few hours earlier with the arrivals on the red carpet. And some people even prefer to watch the whole thing for the fashions and not for the movies.
Absolutely. I love to watch the fashions
There
while
you
in
go.
my pajamas.
Ah, well, next Sunday evening.
Yes.
Okay,
Well,
well, thank you very much. And thank you all who were here today, one way or another, connected from wherever you physically are. That's the beauty and the power of Zoom. And I'll be back. I don't remember exactly when, but we have something scheduled, Erin and I, for another presentation. So stay tuned when it comes to the information about those. And of course, enjoy the Oscars.
thank you. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you.